Can't Escape the Magic by Artfax. Chapter 16. The young man spent the rest of his time slumming around the various districts of Balbad, gathering gossip and information. A few nobles were fleeing the country with alarming speed, with all their belongings and wealth. He made a mental note to deny the corrupt men acceptance into Sindria. A couple of rumors of various affairs, missing women, the issue of slave traders, circling the surrounding area like vultures over a carcass. Nothing of use to him or Sindria, but it was better for him to know anyway than not. The sun was sinking low in the sky when Jafar slinked through the high window of the hotel hallway. Sinbad was also just arriving at the door to their rooms. The king noticed Jafar and, like always, lit up at the sight of his friend. "Jafar, how did it go? Are you alright?" The king's voice was casual but also heavy with his anxiousness for answers. The advisor nodded. "We'll have our slavers by mid-morning tomorrow, along with new robes for Cinna and Noct, later today." "Good. I noticed Nox's shirt was badly ripped this afternoon. The guards are all prepared for our plan and will meet you at the noble's residence just after sunset." "Very well. A merchant should be by soon with the new robes. We should see what chaos Mesrur has managed to contain." "You know, sometimes I feel a little bad for him," Sinbad chuckled. "We always give him the most difficult jobs. He deserves a break when we get home. Perhaps a few days off?" Jafar suggested. "That sounds good. Perhaps we should all have a few days off," Sinbad wheedled. "You wish." Jafar deadpanned and slid the heavy door open. The front room was quiet. The couch was blocking the full view of the table and sitting area. Mesrur was sitting quietly on one of the couches, and Aladdin and Morgiana were nowhere to be seen. Sinbad and Jafar came closer and caught Mesrur's eyes. The Fanalese man looked calm and quite a bit more relaxed than either man had ever seen before. The table was covered with dirty dishes from dinner. Sinbad looked down and realized that Cinna and Noct were cuddled around the armored man's feet and ankles. Various oceanic maps were scattered about around them, and Cinna was pointing at small areas and looking up at Mesrur for information. The large Fanalese man looked searchingly at where the boy was pointing and answered. "That is the island of Kars. It's a holding of Albad. Main export is yellow carp and mini squid." Cinna nodded and pushed the map to Noct, who swept his finger to the landmass on the top. "That is Imachak. It's an ally of Sindria, full of very strong people. It has a lot of snow." Sinbad thought that Mesrur's explanation was a bit lackluster, but it got the basic job done. The king leaned over the back of the couch to add to this commentary. "The Imachak warriors are a powerful people, not to mention giant. One of our dear friends is a member of one of the 5 great tribes. His name is Hina-Ho-Ho." "Hina-Ho-Ho?" Cinna twitched his head up at the king. Sinbad snorted and felt Jafar snicker beside him. "Hina-Ho-Ho? Oh, he was definitely saving that to use later. His name is a bit difficult to get your tongue around, but don't worry. I'm sure you'll get the hang of it before you meet him." Sinbad smiled down at the boys. "Meet him?" Zen asked, squinting suspiciously at the king. Sinbad noticed a few crumbs clinging to Cinna's too-thin cheeks. A part of him wanted to see them pudgy and full like how children's cheeks should be. But his unknowing son and his friend still carried the terrible thinness that slavery left with them. It was good that they could fill their stomachs now that they were in his care, but a small angry part of Sinbad is that he was a terrible father for allowing his son to suffer. Even if he didn't know about Senna, it was no excuse. But being angry wouldn't benefit Senna now and wouldn't wash away the hurt he had to experience. All he could do was try to be the best father he could and ensure that Cinna's life from this point on was better. Sinbad could push away that angry, dissatisfied part of himself and focus on his son now. The calm-faced king leaned casually against the back of the couch so that he could peer down at the children. "He lives in Sindria along with his family. After we leave Bolbad, we're going back home." "Can Cinna and I come too?" Noct perked up with a delightful smile, a bit of fruit juice still clinging to his chin. Jafar made a clucking noise and pulled a handkerchief out of a small pocket in his sleeve. Sinbad watched, amused, as his advisor and most deadly assassin made his way around the couch to fret over the 2 boys and their messy faces. Sinbad was glad that there was someone else for Jafar to be a mother hen over. For a deadly assassin, he was surprisingly adept at behaving motherly. It brought a smile to Sinbad's face at the sight of his son wriggling away from the deadly handkerchief Jafar was wielding. Sinbad tried distracting the freckled man by smashing a white grape on his cheek. Jafar made a wounded squeak cheek at the sticky tang, but finished scrubbing the boy's own sticky cheeks before attending to his own mess. Sinbad and Masrur chuckled at the sight of Jafar being bested, if only a little bit, by such a small child. The group of them all laughed at the humorous sight. A knock on the door distracted them. Sinbad was the closest to the door, so he answered it. It was a comely-looking maid who flushed hotly at the sight of him. Sinbad gave her a charming smile. It always did his ego good to have women swoon over him. Sirs, a merchant is in the lobby looking for a man called Masrur. I was told he was in this room. Ah, those are the clothes I requested. Jafar clucked, getting up from his kneeling position by the boys, wiping the grape juice from his cheek and tucking the sticky handkerchief away. The maid's eyes darted to look who was speaking, and she suddenly blushed even more furiously. I'm so sorry for intruding! And before Sinbad could stop her, she dashed down the hallway. What was that about? Sinbad looked over his shoulder to see what flustered her so. It took a moment before he got it. From her position at the door, she couldn't see Cinna or Noct on the floor with their maps. The couch blocked her view. All she could see was Masrur sitting on the couch relaxed, and then Jafar standing from a lower position in front of him with a handkerchief wiping his mouth. Sinbad hanged out a thunderous burst of chuckles and held the door frame to keep himself from tumbling down. Sin, what's so funny? Jafar queried. Nothing. The king was trying to catch his breath, but you as Masrur might be catching some of the maid's stares after tonight. What? Never mind that. Masrur, could you go and fetch the packages while I get Cinna and knocked into the bath? They are covered head to toe in filth. Hey, we're not that dirty, Cinna defended, sounding indignant. That's right, Mr. Jafar. We had our bath last month. Noct didn't whine, but seemed just as reluctant to be in the tub. Jafar blanched in disgust. Swiftly, he ducked down and tried to capture Cinna in his arms. The tiny purplet tried to scramble away by climbing up the couch and leaping off the back of the couch. Sinbad caught the little boy mid-fall and grinned down at his cute pout. Let go! No way do I need a bath. I'm fine! Cinna struggled as Sinbad passed him off to Jafar. While Jafar had Cinna tucked in his arms, he simply held Noct's hand. It was obvious that while Cinna would fight against any attempt to clean him, Noct was the more passive child and simply obeyed their requests. Jafar took the children into the bathing chambers, and Masrur left the room too, leaving Sinbad to sink down into the soft cushions of the couch and take a few moments to think. The faint sounds of splashing and squeals from behind the bathroom door didn't distract him too much. He tilted his head back on the edge of the couch and let the light from outside guide his thoughts. The sun was just beginning to set, and the hotel room was bathed in warm red light. It had been the first time today that he had time to fully think about everything. It's hard to believe that he had just met his son early this morning. The idea washed over Sinbad like a wave. A son. He had a son. He tried to imagine how his people would react to the news. The revelation that Sindria now had a prince. That Sinbad had an heir and his lineage was secure. He didn't doubt that they would be happy. He thought about how his generals and advisors would respond too, along with the various enemies he gathered around the world. But the person he was most anxious to tell was Cinna himself. Sinbad knew that he couldn't reveal himself to be Cinna's father until after the danger in Balbad passed. As much as he yearned to tell him, Cinna was only 7. He could blurt out that information to the wrong people, and who knows what could happen then. Or he could be angry and run away, falling back into the hands of the slave traders that circled the city. He couldn't allow that to happen. And Sinbad didn't want to walk into the situation blind either, until he interrogated the slave traders and discovered the true extent of abuse his son endured, and take more than a pound of flesh for his sake. He couldn't afford to blunder into a lackluster explanation. He only had one chance to be a good father after all, and as much as Jafar nagged him about not thinking things through, and to be honest, he didn't think about things as much as he should, he didn't want to take the chance of Cinna hating and rejecting him as a father. The safest option Sinbad had was to wait until they were on the ship back to Sindria and tell him there. On a ship, Cinna wouldn't be able to run into danger. While Sinbad was thinking, Jafar came out of the bathing chambers. His turban was askew and his robes were soaked along the bottom end. Sinbad couldn't help but poke fun at him. Didn't you say the children were the ones who needed a bath? Jafar gave him a dry look. Shut up! He collapsed next to Sinbad on the couch. It was mostly Sinna making a fuss anyway. He didn't want any help, even though he was literally caked in filth. He insisted on sitting in a separate tub than knocked. He said the last person he had a bath with was a peeping mermaid and a golden egg. Jafar chuckled. Sinbad joined him. He certainly has a fanciful imagination, doesn't he? Jafar rubbed his forehead and groaned. Maybe he'll write fantasy stories as well as you do. All my novels are real, completely accurate and true. Sinbad whined as Jafar rolled his eyes. Yeah, as you say, my king. The advisor used his saggy sleeves to cover his smirk. Oh, no sarcasm when I hear it, Jafar. Sinbad pouted. The door opened behind them. The two men twisted their heads to look at Masroor come in with a set of bundles in his arms. Jafar lifted himself off of the couch, took the packages out of the Fanalise's hands. Ah, Masroor, good. Let's give them to the boys to try on. Jafar took the wrapped robes to the bathing chambers and ducked inside. Masroor took a seat next to Sinbad. Aladdin and Morgiana are waiting for us in the lobby. The sun is setting. Understood. We'll put the boys to bed and then go. Sinbad crossed his arms. The two men sat in silence for a while. The door of the bathing chambers opened. Sinna and Noct were nudged forward by Jafar. Sinna had his head covered by a dark sea-green turban with a blue ribbon securing it, a blue cotton tunic with a bronze clasp on the hip, a light green wrap was twisted around his waist. His legs were covered in a pair of soft linen pants and dark slippers. Jafar even managed to get him a pair of bronze bangles. Noct was wrapped in a deep maroon robe with stiff golden buttons and a forest green fabric belt, both made of thick cotton. He had a pair of similar pants and equally dark slippers. A new green binding replaced his old rough leather tie. Both boys' cheeks were scrubbed pink, and their hair was soft and still a bit damp. Noct was flushed and nervous-looking, while Sinna looked defiant and cranky. He scowled up at the adults, while Noct shuffled behind him like a skittish cat. Sinbad knelt to face the boys. Well, now the two of you don't look like dust monsters. He smiled. Thank you, Mr. Sinbad. Noct mumbled behind his friend. Sinna pouted, and Sinbad could barely resist going. He looked so embarrassed, but was hiding it with a furious little pout. Thanks, old man, Sinna grumbled. Sinbad sighed and ruffled the boy's head, knocking his turban to the side. You know, that almost sounded nice, Sinna. He chuckled while the boy fixed his headpiece and hissed at him. Jafar paced to the door. I'm glad to see that the merchant got your sizes correct. But it is bedtime. There are additional sleeping robes inside of the bedroom. It's late, so go on now. Noct nodded and walked toward the door. Sinna stood still. The dark-skinned boy looked back in concern. Sinna, let's go. He reached back and tugged on his friend's hand. I want to go with you, Sinna demanded. Jafar shook his head. We've already talked about this, Sinna. That's not happening. You will be staying at the hotel tonight, and we will see you in the morning. That's not fair. It's my plan. I need to be there. The boy stomped his feet petulantly. Jafar sighed exasperated and stared at the ceiling. Sinbad, you tell him. Jafar threw him a look that plainly said, It's your son. You deal with it. The king of Cinderia looked comically overwhelmed, but he reached over and picked the boy up with a squeal. Let me down! Shush! It's bedtime and that is non-negotiable. Noct, go on to bed. I have to talk to Sinna. The copper-eyed boy looked nervous, but obediently went inside. Sinbad sat Sinna on the couch and knelt in front of him. Sinna, I want you to calm down and look at me. Sinbad kept his voice slow and low. Sinna stopped wriggling away from him, and green eyes met amber. Jafar, Masroor, Morgiana, Aladdin and I are going to face dangerous people tonight. And we might be fighting a small army of thieves and bandits. We can't focus on them if we're worried about you. If we brought you with us, I'd be more worried about protecting you than stopping them. And if you snuck out, like I know you're planning to... With that, he gave the now guilty-looking boy a deep stare. You'd probably get lost or caught by the many slave traders that are still circling the city. If that happens, the Noct would be left all alone. Do you want that? No. Good. Now I need you to be here with Noct. He needs you to be here to protect him. Can you do that for me? Fine. Oh man. Zina nodded unhappily and let Sinbad push him into the bedroom. Jafar waited until he, Masrur, and Sinbad were nearly to the lobby before commented, "Nicely done, Sinbad." The king looked a bit pleased. "He's a lot like I was at that age, trying to be brave and acting like a man. I'll just use what would have worked on me at that age." "That's very wise." Masrur complimented him as his red eyes caught sight of Aladdin waving at them from the front entrance. "Yes, but let's focus on the fog trip for now," Jafar insisted. "You're right. Let's catch ourselves some thieves tonight." Sinbad gave his brightest grin and led the small group out into the streets of Baalbad, the last light of day escaping from sight.